You can learn more about a country by looking at its finances than by listening to its national anthem. Crises don't just reveal numbers, they reveal character. Boomerang by Michael Lewis isn't just a book about numbers, debt, or banking systems. It's a journey through societies that lived through financial bubbles, believed in easy money, and woke up in chaos. Lewis, with his signature style, doesn't just describe events. He dives into the DNA of each nation, showing us how their culture shaped their collapse. And that's the deeper truth. A country's economy is a mirror of its psychology, its fears, desires, and delusions. Not every place collapsed for the same reason. Some chased wealth they didn't understand. Others lived on lies for years. Some simply closed their eyes and hoped for the best. This isn't a technical book. You don't need a degree in economics to follow along. You only need to pay attention. Because every story he shares is a story of human behavior. People who thought, this can't happen to us, until it did. Nations that seem far removed from our daily lives and yet reflect the same traps we all face, just on a different scale. Across different landscapes, from icy northern shores to sunlit Mediterranean islands and sprawling American suburbs, Boomerang unfolds 5 worlds so different they feel like parallel universes, and yet all fell for the same reason. They refused to face reality when it was staring them in the face. Through each of these stories, Lewis shows us that a crisis is never just financial. It's a crisis of values, of logic, and ultimately of identity. Once, Iceland was a nation of fishermen. Tough people used to cold seas, harsh conditions, and a simple way of life. It was a small, isolated country, and until the early 2000s, largely irrelevant on the global economic map. And yet, in just a few short years, the Icelandic people managed to build one of the most spectacular and brief financial bubbles in modern history. How did it happen? The same people who once relied on fishing suddenly believed they could become global investors. Not just investors, world-class bankers. And they believed it with conviction. The country opened its doors to finance, relaxed regulations, and allowed its banks to borrow staggering sums from abroad. The remarkable part is that they did it with almost no experience. These new bankers were former fishermen, lawyers, or economics students who simply believed they could take over the financial world. And for a while, it looked like they might. Icelanders began buying property in London, acquiring football clubs, even flying in private jets. The country appeared to have transformed into an economic miracle. But like all bubbles, this one had an expiration date. The banks had borrowed amounts many times greater than the entire GDP of Iceland. And when the global financial crisis hit, the entire system collapsed like a house of cards. The banks failed, the currency plummeted, and ordinary people found themselves in debt, unemployed, and lost. Iceland didn't just pay financially, it paid psychologically. A nation once proud of its self-sufficiency saw its self-image shattered. And yet, out of the wreckage, it was forced to rethink everything. Its system, its culture, its very identity. For Iceland, the crisis wasn't just an economic event. It was a mirror, reflecting a society that tried to become something it wasn't, and paid the price in the harshest way possible. Now we turn to my country, my homeland, Greece. And here, the story cuts deeper, because this isn't just an economic collapse. It's a collective wound, a painful reminder of how easily an illusion can be built, and how violently it can fall apart. Before the crisis, Greece lived with an air of prosperity. Everything seemed possible. Massive projects, EU funds, loans for houses, cars, vacations. The public sector kept expanding, government jobs were handed out like candy, and everyone believed this normality would last forever. No one asked where the money came from, only how to get more of it. But the real issue wasn't just financial, it was cultural. Greece is a country with a rich history, but a deep mistrust of its own state. Citizens don't trust the government, and the government doesn't trust its citizens. The entire system ran on favors, loopholes, tax evasion, and patronage. Everyone knew something was wrong, but everyone also looked away. When the crisis hit, Greece didn't just go bankrupt. It was stripped bare. The lies, the blind spots, the false confidence, all exposed. People lost their jobs, their stability, their sense of security, but the most devastating blow wasn't financial. It was the realization that there was no shared trust left to build a way out. Everyone tried to save themselves alone. And in the midst of that chaos, something even worse emerged: division. Instead of unity, society fractured. The privileged and the fired, the lazy and the productive. People turned against each other, forgetting they were all on the same sinking ship. Greece didn't just experience an economic crisis. It lived through a crisis of identity. And perhaps, in some ways, it still does. Because the real question isn't whether we exited the bailouts, but whether we learned anything. Whether we understood how we got here. And most of all, whether we truly want to change. If in Iceland the crisis was a story of excess, and in Greece a story of lost trust, then in Ireland the collapse came from silence. A society that sensed something was wrong, but no one wanted to say it out loud. Before the crisis, Ireland was seen as an economic miracle, the Celtic tiger. Investment, growth, tech, money. Everything seemed to be going perfectly. But beneath the surface, something was brewing. Banks were lending wildly to developers, builders, and individuals with almost no oversight. The country filled with new construction, massive housing developments, thousands of homes no one truly needed. The economy was no longer based on production or innovation. It was riding on a property bubble disguised as growth. And while the cranes filled the skyline and the banks inflated their numbers, society remained quiet. There were no strong voices of dissent, no culture of saying no. The Irish, as Lewis describes, feared confrontation. They didn't want to disturb the image. So when the bubble burst, it happened fast and hard. The banks collapsed. The government stepped in to bail them out, placing the burden on everyday citizens. People who had worked honestly suddenly found themselves in debt they never created. And the most painful part? There was no outrage. There was shame. The society withdrew inward, almost frozen. Not angry, just disappointed. Ireland reveals a different side of crisis. Not greed, but quiet complicity. When everyone sees the problem, but no one dares to name it. When a society chooses peace over truth until it's too late. 3 different countries, 3 different cultures. And yet, the same truth behind every collapse. A financial crisis is never just about money. It's a crisis of character, a crisis of choices, and ultimately, a crisis of identity. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Your opinion matters. Leave us a comment and share which story resonated with you the most, or if it reminded you of something from your own life. A single share can make a huge difference. It helps the algorithm show this video to more people. And in the next part, we'll dive into 2 more revealing stories that prove even the strongest-looking societies often hide deep cracks beneath the surface.